Welcome to Frank Movie Talks. I'm Frank, and today I want to ask you, who is your Batman? What does he mean to you? We're many to love him, but do we all love the same version? Do we all love him for the same reasons? Batman can be both the Superman or not. Both the Dark Knight and the Bright Knight, detective and superhero, realistic and fantastic, crazy and relatively sane. He's one of the most complex fictional characters and became a myth constantly reinterpreted by different creators according to their own concerns and their own sensibilities. Someone once told me, I don't like Batman, but I have to admit he has the best rogues gallery. The question I ask myself is, can we really separate the two? Or is it the heroes who carries within themselves everything needed to create the best opponents? Take for example Spider-Man, probably the Marvel superhero with the most recognizable rogues gallery. He's in love with Mary Jane, in need of money, and his spider powers come both from radioactivity and a gadget. Who are his opponents? Rhino, chameleon, lizard, scorpion, vulture, octopus. In short, bank robbers who have animal powers thanks to radioactive mutations or gadget, and who kidnap Mary Jane on a more or less regular basis. If Spider-Man's opponents are so redundant, it's because rather than testing each of them a specific aspect of the hero, they all relate to his general theme.
With great power comes great responsibility.
It's probably this weakness in Spider-Man's mythology that has forced the writers of the Marvel movies to transform two of his emblematic adversaries, the Vulture and Mysterio, into adversaries of Iron Man. By their motivations, their personality, and their actions, the adversaries of the heroes must criticize them, question them, and attack one of their most fundamental aspects. The more complex are the heroes, the more things can be said about them, and the more their opponents will be able to distinguish themselves from each other. Batman is the alter ego of Bruce Wayne, an aristocrat who, if he wanted, could use his money and contacts to take control of Gotham's underworld, just like the Penguin. Batman is a detective who relies on his intellect to solve mysteries, which the Riddler puts to the test, but he's also a ninja ready to break the laws for the greater good, just like Ra's al Ghul. Batman uses fear to impose his authority, but must avoid abusing it so as to not become Scarecrow. If his crusade against crime became simply a quest for revenge motivated by the murder of his parents, then he would be no better than Mr. Freeze, who objectifies his wife to justify his misdeeds. His difficulty to reconcile the two halves of his personality is inevitably reminiscent of Two-Face, but it's because he has a visceral urge to be Batman in order to make sense of his life and trauma that his worst enemy is the Joker, since the Joker has decided that his trauma proves that life doesn't make sense. Whenever Batman takes on one of his opponents to bring them back to Arkham, he's in fact confronted with his own demons, which he suppresses until their next escape. It's also for this reason that the majority of Batman's opponents are not aliens or demonic spirits, but ordinary humans with mental health issues. In Spider-Man's defense, he's still a quite young superhero when compared to Batman, who was created more than 20 years before him. It wasn't until the 70s that Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams freed Batman from the kitsch vision imposed by the 60s series to turn him into an obsessive-compulsive anti-hero that O'Neil describes modestly as a simple return to source. In 1986, walking in the footsteps of O'Neil, who had been his editor on Daredevil, Frank Miller, future creator of Sin City and 300, once again reinvented Batman in a graphic novel that changed the industry forever. The Dark Knight Returns. The story takes place in the future. Gotham has evolved into a liberal society where citizens have come together to end police brutality and protect the rights of criminals. For the indecisive, neoconservative, and undeclared fascist American Frank Miller, this is a dystopian future. Gotham is more decadent than ever because its institutions have become more tolerant, especially since Batman retired 10 years earlier and doctors began treating patients like the Joker with compassion.
I'm told you've killed about 600 people. How exactly does your side of that go?
Stop right there. This is a sensitive man, and I won't have him being harassed.
A new generation of thugs is terrorizing the city, and the police no longer have any authority.
Tonight, I am going to maintain order in Gotham City. You are going to help me.
Batman is the only solution to save the city and a necessity. For Miller, it's only natural and even desirable that a strong man like Batman takes matters into his own hands, imposes authority on other citizens, and punish criminals however he pleases.
And then we heard President Roosevelt on the radio. That voice, strong and sure, taking our fear and turning it into a fighting spirit. He's why we won that war.
Tonight, we are the law. Tonight, I am the law.
Barely 2 years after the publication of The Dark Knight Returns, Alan Moore, the British and anarchist magician best known as the creator of Watchmen and V for Vendetta, offered a more nuanced response to Frank Miller's radical ideas with a graphic novel that has become equally important in the myth of Batman, The Killing Joke. In this story, Alan Moore explores the similarities between Batman and the Joker by giving the criminal clown a tragic origin story like The Dark Knight, and demonstrating that the way Batman deals with his trauma is just as problematic as the Joker does. The divergent political views of Frank Miller and Alan Moore came into direct confrontation in 2011 when Miller spoke about the manifestants of Occupy Wall Street. These anti-capitalist protesters wore the same Guy Fawkes mask as V in Moore's graphic novel, and among other things, Miller called them clowns who should get a job, to which Moore replied that they were ordinary people claiming rights that should always have been theirs, and that if they had been sociopaths disguised as Batman, Miller surely would have been in their favor. The Occupy Wall Street movement also served as the inspiration for part of the plot of The Dark Knight Rises, released the following year, in which Bane attacks the Gotham Stock Exchange and Catwoman threatens Bruce Wayne on behalf of the 99%.
You think all this can last? There's a storm coming, Mr. Wayne. You and your friends better batten down the hatches, because when it hits, you're all gonna wonder how you ever thought you could live so large and leave so little for the rest of us.
As the economic inequalities and social damages caused by the austerity policies during the last 40 years are at the core of 2019's Joker.
They've cut our funding. We're closing down our offices next week. The city's cut funding across the board. Social services is part of that. This is the last time we'll be meeting. They don't give a shit about people like you, Arthur. And they really don't give a shit about people like me either.
The words of Thomas Wayne, played here by Brett Cullen, who has played a corrupt senator in The Dark Knight Rises, are almost identical to those of Frank Miller towards Occupy Wall Street protesters.
Those of us who have made something of our lives will always look at those who haven't as nothing but clowns.
Despite their values and opposed interpretations of the Batman universe, or rather thanks to their disagreements, Frank Miller and Alan Moore, just like before them Dennis O'Neil, Grant Morrison, Bill Finger, and several others, each have helped redefine Batman's mythology, making it an endless source of different and sometimes even contradictory stories. But the fans have their limits. When Frank Miller took his portrayal of Batman as a sadistic bully to the point where he came to verbally and physically abuse Robin and run over police officers with his Batmobile just because they were in his way, he did not meet the same success as with The Dark Knight Returns or Batman Year One. Subsequently, when Miller began writing a graphic novel full of Islamophobic propaganda, he had to face the facts and replace Batman with a new character. His Batman was no longer nobody's Batman. DC's first superheroes, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, were created towards the end of the Great Depression to give some hope to people. It is no coincidence then that Batman made a strong comeback in the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan responded to a new economic crisis by putting in place policies that only worsened social inequalities.
I regret to say that we're in the worst economic mess since the Great Depression.
As the 80s are back in fashion since a couple of years, it's no coincidence either that The Dark Knight Returns inspired Nolan for The Dark Knight Rises, released after the 2008 financial crisis.
You're slowing down?
Yeah, we're in for a show, kid.
Boy, you are in for a show tonight, son.
Snyder for Batman vs. Superman, released 4 years later.
Back off or I'll kill him! Believe me, man, I'll do it!
I believe you.
Drop it.
I said drop it! I'll kill her! Believe me, I'll do it!
I believe you.
And was adapted in between into an animated movie. It seems that superhero movies like slashers are very popular when they can offer a catharsis to our very real anxieties. As The Dark Knight Returns and the films it inspired constitute in a way a response from the right to socio-economic problems, The Killing Joke, as we saw previously, offers a point of view more on the left. And so again, it's no coincidence that Todd Phillips responded to all of those movies with Joker, which takes a lot more inspiration from The Killing Joke than from The Dark Knight Returns. My Batman is the one from Tim Burton's duology, and the animated series from the 90s. That being said, my take on the character and his world has not remained frozen since then. For example, my idea of the Penguin today is very different from the one offered by Tim Burton in Batman Returns, and I consider Bullock's character to be a lot more nuanced than what we saw in the animated series. Starting next week, I suggest that we explore together the filmography of Batman. Over the course of my videos, I will draw on both my thoughts and those from people who know their subject much better than I do, such as philosophers, psychologists, and many other experts. My intention is not to contradict your own view of the character, but hopefully to share new perspectives with you. I will also try to offer a complimentary look to the opinions generally defended on YouTube, but if you have a vision of Batman that has never been represented either in my videos or in those of any other YouTuber, I encourage you to share it in the comments, or even to produce your own videos. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything, and please like and share the video. Until then, see you next time.